All right, and so there's a lot to talk about, but of course, what we want to primarily discuss or focus on this morning is the United Democratic Party's Belmopan Standard Bearer Convention. And that took place yesterday, and it is all the talk.
Yes.
It is the biggest talk in town, and we could start from the beginning, from the morning when everybody woke up and they got out and we saw those long lines. But we'll do this thing a bit in reverse.
Yeah.
We'll start with the results, which everyone, well, for the most part, if you're on social media, if you're listening to your radio, you would know that John Saldivar, former Belmopani representative, was victorious in that convention against newcomer Emil Torres, and then, of course, Mr. Colonel George Lovell, who is no stranger to politics, government administration, etc. So yesterday, we saw, according to the stats I have, and I'll be corrected by our guest if it's not fully the case, but 1,914 votes in total casted, and out of that, John Saldivar, he was able to garner a total of 901 votes, while retired Colonel Lovell, George Lovell, he received 512 votes, and Emil Torres received 457 votes, and there were 44 spoiled ballots. So
by almost 50%.
We saw there where John Saldivar overwhelmingly kicked his competition to the curb, winning by, like you said, rightfully said, almost 50%. He garnered, I would imagine, at least some 68%, of the vote. Was it expected? Was it that that we predicted this? If you would have listened to the noise at the water cooler conversations, the conversations around the table, I think many expected, for the most part, that John Saldivar would be victorious in Belmopan. He definitely came with that level of confidence when we spoke to him right here on Open Your Eyes, him saying, you know what, I will win this. But I have a comment here from the party leader, the leader of the opposition, and he gave via text some words, and basically saying congratulations to all the candidates for keeping democracy alive and demonstrating how viable the UDP is in Belmopan. The people of Belmopan have spoken in one of our most sacred democratic exercises. Thus, we respectfully move forward with the choice of the people. John Saldivar, he said, I called all three candidates to wish them well and asked Mr. Lovell and Torres to come together to support all the efforts of Mr. Saldivar in Belmopan in the name of the UDP, so we can win the municipal and general election. This was never personal for me, he says. I did what I believe to be the right course of action. The people of Belmopan have spoken. The matter is closed. Onward with the business of getting the party ready for municipal election. We have many more constituency conventions coming up. Final thought, looking forward to get viable candidates in place for all constituencies so that they can get to work for the upcoming municipal elections. And of course, April, I had to read the entire.
Of course, no, but those were sound words from the leader of the opposition, Honorable Moses Shine Barrow. And as we are having this discussion about the convention yesterday and moving forward and what the plans are for the next conventions for the UDP, we are joined today by the chairman of the United Democratic Party, Mr. Michael Peyrefitte. He is going to be in with us to discuss more about the convention, to discuss how they expect other conventions to go. And as we are going to bring on the chairman, we are introducing this video from the Honorable John Saldivar and his words of thank you.
Yeah.
I, John B. Saldiva, do solemnly swear that as the United Democratic Party standard bearer for the Belmopan constituency, I will work diligently to bring victory to our United Democratic Party. I pledge to be true and faithful to the principles and ideals of the party. I will uphold the party's constitution and will work hard to the very best of my judgment and ability. So help me God.
Oath of allegiance for standard bearer, just read by John Saldiva. He's the new standard bearer for Belmopan. We're now going to get the official results from the party leader, from the chairman of the party himself, Michael Peyrefitte.
Yes, I do. Okay. After the ballots being cast today, 457 went for Mr. Emil Torres, 512 went for Colonel George Lovell, and 901 went for John Saldiva. Congratulations.
Thank you, brother.
All right, and there you have it, John Saldiva's official swearing in as the new standard bearer for the Belmopan area representative. Now we have with us in studio the chairman of the United Democratic Party, Mr. Michael Peyrefitte. Good morning.
Morning to the both of you.
Morning, sir. Well, let's talk about it. Yesterday, coming off the heels of what was one of the more highly anticipated conventions, and it was the convention that kicked off the convention season for the United Democratic Party, as I understand it. What's your thoughts coming out of that in terms of how it all played out? And there's a lot of facets there to perhaps look at, from the start of the morning to when it all ended, and you made those announcements, and that's swearing in.
Yes, well, the main thing that we were concerned about in the Secretariat was to ensure that we had a free and fair election yesterday and to maintain law and order, essentially. We knew that there were a lot of emotions, a lot of issues going on, a lot at play. And so when you have that, we in the Secretariat have to make sure that there is a level of calm and cool heads must prevail at all times to ensure that people can come in and speak their mind and do their thing with their ballots. That's what our job was yesterday. Needless to say, we were excited and happy with the energy that all three candidates brought. John Saldiva, Colonel Lovell, Emil Torres. I was pleasantly surprised to see the two of those people, Colonel Lovell and Emil Torres, the level of aggressiveness that the campaign, brought to the table, and it was exciting to see the UDP in full form in Belmopan yesterday. And of course, you can only have one person emerging from that, and that was John Saldiva. But it doesn't say anything negative at all about the efforts of Colonel Lovell and Emil Torres, who we both expect to now support the standard bearer as we move forward.
There were talks of, and since we're talking about the day of the election, there were talks of some perhaps unscrupulous business taking place. Rumors being spread, accusations being hurled from one side to the next as the competition was heating up throughout the day. Stories of bacon houses being established close to the polling area. Are these things that the Secretariat seek to investigate in an attempt to ensure that the results that was brought forth at the end of the day, that those are fair results, and that this was a transparent process with no illicit activities taking place on the side?
Well, my response is twofold to that. First of all, you say talks, rumors, accusation. Welcome to politics.
Oh, we saw videos as well.
Videos of what? Of who?
Okay.
Of who? I mean, if you have credible information of who was paying who or who was doing what, then you bring it and we investigate. But just talk, just rumors, just accusations, those don't fly. And in politics, there will always be talks, there will always be accusations, there will always be rumors that are just that, rumors, talks, and accusations. Unless you have hard evidence, then how can you do that? And then the next thing is, as the Secretariat, we cannot be focused on that. We have to be focused on the inside. We have to make sure that people come, they get their ballot, the integrity of the system is maintained, and people vote according to their own conscience. And then a third thing, if I may add to the two that I just talked about. The Belizean people, let me put it this way, I'm confident of this. The Belizean people are not for sale. You can't pay nobody to vote in any direction. People are known historically to take your money and vote the other way. So money doesn't determine election in terms of people will vote for who they want to vote for, no matter what incentives you try to give them or whatever game you try to bring. When it's all over, people will enter that booth. That's why they say the sanctity of the voting booth. When you go into that voting booth, it's just you and that pen and that ballot, and you will be the one to determine how you vote. Nobody can make you vote in any direction.
Yeah, but perhaps it speaks of a culture that, for the most part, as I see, a younger generation are trying to rid themselves of surrounding elections, where no one attempts to coerce somebody by means of bribery, and I'm just throwing that word out there loosely, or by means of convincing through one mean or another. It's abhorrent, and it's something that this younger generation, we're saying we don't want to see that at the polls anymore. And as we look on in terms of selecting a viable candidate for whether for the UDP or the PUP, we're hoping that these things are stomped out, because they're only seeds that are planted and perhaps will bear greater fruits of corruption in the future. Now, let me ask you about...
No, if I could respond to that, though.
Go
I would say 100 years ago, 50 years ago, that generation was saying, we younger generation want to see something different. And every young generation wants to do something so noble that this young generation wants to do. I mean, the culture, the problem with the culture is the culture of rumors, the culture of accusations, the culture of making false claims against people for which there is no evidence. And who is to say who was doing what I heard about some bacon houser.
Yeah.
Who was to say who was doing what? Did you see any UDP person dealing with that? Maybe it was the PUP. Who knows?
When we're talking about the numbers, well,
The turnout.
the turnout and so forth, we had the three candidates campaigning for the past few weeks and months. For the newcomers, Emil Torres and Colonel Lovell, did you expect these numbers? What were your thoughts on their campaigns and the persons that endorsed them and voted for them?
Well, I wasn't intimately involved in any of the campaigns. I purposely stay far from any convention situation. And sometimes when you're riding on the fence of the Secretariat, you get attacked from both sides, right? But that's the name of the game. This is the business we have chosen. But I enjoyed the energy that they brought. Like I said earlier, I was pleasantly surprised to see that for first-time candidates, they were about this. They were serious about this, and I think they did fairly well given their new experience. So when I heard the energy they were bringing, the aggression from the two camps, the seriousness with which they were approaching this, sometimes people go into these conventions as placeholders, or people put them as placeholders. Those two gentlemen yesterday were not placeholders. They were serious about it. They wanted to represent the UDP in the next general elections, and that was what we felt in the last couple of weeks, in the last couple of months, and that was what we saw on full display yesterday, happily.
We saw almost 2,000 voters come out yesterday, which is still a bit short of what John Saldivar was able to, the amount of votes he was able to garner at the general election in 2020 and far from what he was able to, the support he was able to get in 2015. For some looking from the outside, it seems, it would appear as if the UDP is still in the rapids, grabbing for a rope to get to shore, while for others, it's a hopeful sign. As the party leader said, democracy is alive, and there's a robust support for the UDP in Belmopan. What's your thoughts on the turnout?
A convention will never be like a national election. I mean, come on. Anybody who is trying to make that comparison is just looking for some level of negativity. And people would say, like you just suggested, that, oh, given the numbers, the UDP is grasping at a rope or a straw or whatever, then what am I doing on Open Your Eyes first thing Monday morning after that convention? Clearly, what happened yesterday was relevant. When you look at all the media who was out there, the excitement that was in the eyes of the media themselves, you could tell that the UDP convention in Belmopan is a big story. You said it yourself on your introduction this morning. It's a big story. Democracy is indeed alive, and the people of Belmopan had their choice and they made their choice.
How do you feel now about this particular convention, and what do you foresee for the other ones? And I'm talking about the unity that is being displayed right now in the party. At the beginning of this year and the ending of last year, we were talking about it being fractured.
Right.
Now after this convention, Belize is seeing a different story. What are your thoughts for the next conventions moving forward?
Well, hopefully they will be the same. We fully expect that for the conventions that are coming up, that they will approach it the same way that the Belmopan candidates did. I said yesterday that nobody talked about the fact that the Belmopan convention, it was a clean campaign. There was no negativity between the candidates, and no negative vibes or no terrorist vibes between each of them. I mean, it was like, this is what we want to do. When we met last week, Wednesday, to discuss the details of what would happen yesterday, it was nothing but love and camaraderie and a commitment that whoever was not victorious would support the person who would win. So it is an excellent time for us to start that healing process, despite what some people outside or inside of the UDP would want to see. We have to start that healing process. We have to move forward. And the people demonstrated yesterday and will continue to demonstrate that negativity and that bad vibes, they're not with it. They want positivity and they want hope. So we have to give the people that.
What will John Saldivar's victory do for the party's rebuilding process, given the U.S. Department of State's declaration of him being significantly corrupt? I would imagine that in the back of some people's minds, it's perhaps a swing bridge that you tread across carefully as you seek to rebuild the United Democratic Party.
What will they do about Donald Trump? He has been...
American politics.
No. We're not talking about American politics. We're talking about hypocrisy. What will they do? He led a coup to attempt to overthrow Joe Biden on January 6th. Is he not still going to run in a Republican convention? His organization has been found guilty of tax fraud. Will he not still run for a Republican convention? We have a former terrorist who the U.S. seemed to be in love with. And you're telling me that the people of Belmopan didn't have the right to choose John Saldivar if that's who they wanted to choose? So I think the people of Belmopan said, just like you said earlier, we're not listening to outside forces. This is Belmopan. And we will choose who we want to choose to represent us. And I think that is democracy at its best. The people have a right to choose who they want to choose. And everybody else must respect that, including the big mighty USA.
In light of the scandals and the allegations that came out from John Saldivar, what is the United Democratic Party's ideas or mandates in terms of transparency when it comes to campaign funding after this?
No, we're all for it, and we fully support it. But the government as well has to be a part of that. And if you say that a particular person took campaign donations from somebody else who turned out to be accused of some criminal activity, I mean, is that news? Is John Saldivar the first person to receive monies from some donor that is not reported in the mainstream situation? I mean, come on, man, the hypocrisy also has to stop. And you talk about accusations. Let's not forget, I wrote to the Secretary of State, Blinken, and informed and said, look, what do you have? Because you have to be fair. You have to be fair. I am no apologist or no support of anybody, but you have to be fair. You cannot just throw something out there and the Belizean people will just jump. I mean, where is the evidence? If he has committed these crimes, if he's so whatever you say he is, then why haven't you arrested him? Why haven't you charged him? Why haven't you brought him before any sort of tribunal? You mean to tell me that this government, this vindictive government, would have that evidence and not have him be charged locally? So you can't just accuse people of things. You have to bring evidence. You have to demonstrate to the people that you have backative for what you're saying. And the people of Belmopan said yesterday in their choice, that doesn't matter to us. We have our choice, and this is who we're going with.
Do you think that the fact that Mr. Torres and Colonel Lovell are not from Belmopan, do you think that those are one of the chances that hurt them in this election?
Well, I'm sure it's a factor. It could be a factor, but I think there are very few. I probably could count on one hand the amount of area representatives who actually live in the constituencies that they represent. So I don't think it was a determining factor, but it may have been. That's for the people to decide. Maybe.
As a member of the UDP's executive yourself, what's your thoughts and projections on the leadership of the United Democratic Party moving forward? We know that your party leader, while we read out some statements that he made to us this morning, we know that he supported Lovell. And we had Mr. Saldivar on this very same couch uttering statements to the extent that it's not in his best interest, in the interest of his legacy, to be opposing him in this convention, being confident of a win yesterday. What is the future of Shine Barrow and the leadership of the United Democratic Party moving forward?
If I could predict the future, I would buy Bolito and win every Sunday. But you can't predict the future. We have a party leader in Shine Barrow. That's our party leader. We have a person who will represent the UDP in Standard Bearer and Belmopan. That's John Saldivar. Those are the facts on the ground as we speak. What the future will bring, we don't know. But I can tell you, my job will be mostly to make sure that we are organized from the ground up this party and to bring as much unity as we can. You cannot forget, you know, maybe you're too young, but I mean, you know, the current Prime Minister resigned in 2015, you know, and was Prime Minister in 2020. The PUP changed leadership about 10 times. About 10 million times during when they were early in opposition. They had newspapers warring against each other. They were accusing each other of all sorts of things, and they're in government now. So I'm not looking forward to any of that negativity that people want to put on the UDP. I'm a hopeless romantic. I look forward to positivity and to goodness that can come from the UDP, that I know that the UDP can produce. So that's my attitude going forward. When it's time for conventions and the like, then the people and the delegates will decide who they want. And they are free to choose who they want.
Now, notwithstanding, we had leader of the opposition, Shine Barrow, here a couple of months ago, and the mandate of the Anti-Corruption Act that your party represents. Now that we have Standard Bearer, John Saldivar, how is the party planning to move forward with criticism when you are having this person now be, I mean, that people vote for, I understand that, right? But how now do you plan to make sure that you are all united moving forward? What are the plans for the United Democratic Party to battle against criticism?
Well, I can't give you our secrets, but we will certainly...
You have to give away secrets, yeah, so we plan for win.
No. What happened is that, listen. I am confident that every person in the UDP wants to see some good level of unity and love so we can be that what we know we can be. That's what we want. That's what we're striving for. And most things start with a conversation. Most things start with, let's sit down and let's talk. We're on the same team. The enemy is there. The enemy is not here. And I think that that is something that we need to push for. That is something that we need to get into. Let's let it out. Let's sit. Let's go on a retreat. Let's do something. And so that we can remind ourselves that we are sisters and brothers within the UDP and we're not enemies of each other. I think if that's the start, and that's always a good start. I mean, what is that settled over a good beer? So that is something that we need to do. That those things are in the pipeline. We plan to have more meetings, more gatherings, more reaching out. There's some people who you and I may have an issue, but you are good with both of us, so you could step in and try to mediate. Those things are starting. We see that starting already. For example, in Cayo, where you had several candidates, for example, in Cayo Central, they requested a meeting with the executive of the party and say, listen, it's 3-4 of us. We don't want this. We don't want any convention. We want to get together and inform the party that we are choosing this individual to represent us in Cayo Central. The same thing happened in Cayo Northeast. The same thing happened in Cayo North. These things are becoming, it's becoming clear then that the UDP has turned that lane, and we are trying to make sure that the UDP becomes the UDP again by the time of the next general election.
Let me ask one final question on my end. I have to ask about young bloods and fresh faces.
Yes.
Can we expect to see some of that emerging from these endorsements and these conventions that are to come? I don't know if John Saldivar's election sets the pace or the tone that eyes are looking for, that the hearts of Belizeans are looking to see, where the rebuilding of the United Democratic Party is concerned. That's old blood, 15 years in leadership, and once again he emerges victorious, and rightfully so, sir. He knows elections. He knows how to win elections. He's been in this game for some time. What can we expect when it comes to new blood and fresh faces?
So there's no old blood in the PUP, only new blood. You know what I mean? Veterans in politics win elections at times. That's how it goes. But listen, I'll give you a teaser for two.
Tell me.
You have this Sunday coming up, February 12th. You have Mr. O'Brien from Cayo Central who will be endorsed. It will be one big bashment, so to speak, where we all get together and show unity and love and come together. The following week is Mr. Albert Fernandez from Cayo Northeast. Another endorsement, another big bashment is expected, because our UDP family, we're hungry to get back again. We're hungry to get back to each other and to start to have the camaraderie that we once had. We want it. We really, really want it. So just two. That's just two. And there's just so more to come. You have Mr. Zueta from Belize, Rural South. You have so many people who are young, who stepped up, who said, we want to be a part of this process. We don't want to keep just talking about it, because it's easy to talk from the cheap seats, you know. It's easy to talk, you know. You have this, you're watching a boxing match and you're telling your fighter, don't worry, nothing knock you, nothing knock you. And the man say, well, watch the referee because somebody didn't knock me. It's easy for you to talk when you're on the outside. I respect anybody. That's why I give maximum respect to Emil Torres and to Colonel Lovell, two people who you wouldn't normally expect to enter politics. They say, listen, we don't want to just talk and criticize the party. We want to be a part of it. And they stepped up And until you step up, put your name on a ballot and say, I want to represent, then, you know, pump your brakes a little bit.
As it comes to the United Democratic Party, and this is my final question as we wrap up for our Eye on the News, how do you feel about the candidacies moving into the municipal elections?
Well, of course, this is the thing. When you have the unity that we have in Belmopan, that's where the candidates and the interests will come from. So we're hoping, I am dying to see that younger generation that you talk about, that internet generation. I'm hoping that they saw what happened in Belmopan yesterday, for example, and say, listen, we want to be a part of this, and we want to be a part of the UDP, and we want to offer ourselves. So we are now depending on Emil, on Colonel Lovell, on John Saldivar, and three other teams to say, listen, look into the community for good people, for new people if possible, and have them represent. When we are finished with the CAIO conventions, for example, the CAIO endorsements, for example, in the coming weeks, we expect those new standard bearers to say, look, you young and energetic, it is now up to you to find the people within your district, your constituencies, your cities, to represent us at the level. That's what we're looking for, because there has to be a decentralization as well for the party. So you four represent CAIO, or that part of CAIO. It is up to you to develop every aspect of politics within that district. And that is what we're excited about it. We're excited about the future, and just the cars that we've been getting yesterday, just the cars that I've been getting since 6 o'clock this morning, a new excitement, a new level of saying, listen, we believe the UDP has turned this corner, and let's go.
All right, well, Mr. Peyrefitte, we want to thank you so much for being on set with us this morning. I really had wished we had some breakfast for you this morning. Some eggs and maybe some bacon.
Me too. You're not too late. You're not too late.
Okay, well, we are trying to line up some bacon at the bacon house for you.
Especially at this ungodly hour.
Right?
But of course, we'll be watching more and keeping a close eye on the other conventions to come. But of course, all of these stories and more, you can catch them on our broadcast tonight at 6 p.m. right here live on 5, and our social media pages on Facebook and YouTube. That does it for Eye on the News.